Hello, everybody. My name is Christopher Saunders, and this is the Connecticut Sports Talent Show, where we talk all things talents in Connecticut. And on today's show, I leave the football field, the gridiron, to go to the pitch, a place that I've used to call home for many, many years up until college, where I decided to play baseball. And I'm pleased to have on not just a head coach, but a first-year head coach with Fitch, taking over a very strong program. Went very, very far, all the way to the championships as far as the playoffs are concerned, rather in the CIEC soccer playoffs on the boys' side. I'm pleased to have on Nick McEnany. Coach, great to be able to have you on the podcast.
It's a pleasure being here, Chris.
And I think I got the name right. I think.
Yep, nailed it.
All right, awesome. It only took me like 40 times to go over in my head. Coach, great to be able to have you on here. Hopefully I can have more coaches either on the girls' side or the boys' side. I know I've had somebody from Montville, Coach Oko. I forgot what he wanted me to call him. I've had him on here. I had the girls' soccer coach from Bunnell. So hopefully this can kind of get things, rolling a little bit.
Absolutely.
Now, before we get into your time, and I know it just started with Fitch. You and I were going back and forth, and I know in, small world, you played at Lyman Memorial. I played against Lyman Memorial in what was the last game for the senior class ahead of me back in the 2009-2010. You were a freshman, and you were telling me how that was the best team that you've ever been around, up and down, left and right. Just talk to me of kind of, because I know Lyman Memorial is not a very big town. Like the area it's not very huge by any means. Just talk to me about,
definitely not.
talk to me about that.
Yeah, so growing up, obviously, in Lebanon, went to Lyman Memorial. Did not, like you just said, did not have a lot of people to choose from in terms of programs from any sport across the board. A lot of these other schools were getting hundreds of kids. We had a very small amount, but that class, or my freshman year, that team, like I just told you before, was one of the best, at least high school teams that I've been a part of. Up and down, there was talent. Like I mentioned to you, there was times where I felt like I didn't even need to be even around that atmosphere. But it was such a great experience for me. I to this day, I still talk with my coaches who I've worked with, Ryan Fabry and Scott Elliott. The two main ones amongst a bunch of others that I've obviously been able to work with my time at Lyman. But a lot of credit to those guys for what they built, for being such a small school. A lot of the stuff that I try to keep in mind or use for my own programs moving forward, what I've done in the past couple of years at Montville, for Southeast, all that stuff, a lot of it is built off of what those guys definitely taught me. So a lot of thanks to Scott and Ryan for kind of building that foundation for sure, for my coaching philosophies and all that.
Now, after you were done playing at Lyman Memorial, did your career end, or did you have an opportunity to be able to play at the college level?
The playing time that kind of faded away going into freshman year. Decided to do a major up at Springfield College. Spent a lot of time doing that, and then it was very quick turnaround where I started to coach and started to open up doors for that, and it was in a very easy decision for me to do. Being a teacher, I've always had pretty decent and effective abilities to talk to people, build relationships, all that stuff. So that was just such an easy transition for me to become a coach. I started coaching the year after I graduated at Lyman. I was like the summer league coach helping out. I got into some club teams out of Coventry, and then I went back to Lyman for my first, official job. I was the JV coach for a year when I was at school at Eastern after I transferred down there. And then, the ball just started rolling from there. And now here I am, over at Fitch, taking on, a big program coming off a very successful season. So
now, just hearing about that kind of, just thinking about the coaches that I do know as far as in the NVL or just in general, and knowing about the game of soccer, It's a very, I feel like, tight knit, because on the coaching side, because you're always around various players, various teams, various clubs. Soccer is one of those rare sports that you can play year round. And what I mean by
Mhm.
that is you can play outside basically any condition. And then also, too, if you want to play indoors, you can play in the turf. They have small fields, condensed fields to kind of work on different things, the short passes, maybe work on your footwork, the technique, and then
Yeah,
obviously the
absolutely.
normal fields. Just talk to me, kind of about that journey, because like you mentioned, there were some teams that you were on, and making that first impression is huge.
Yeah. So are you looking for like the coaching aspect of it or?
Either one, whichever one you want to talk about.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you said, the year-round aspect, you're getting a lot of players who are committed to the game of soccer more so than, everything else. Um, you know, I've been lucky to coach and play with, but more so coach now. Um, some players whose talent exceeds anything that I would even be able to think that I would be able to do. But a lot of those times those kids play a lot of other sports as well. So you're always battling with getting everybody to buy into what you're trying to do. I'm kind of just speaking on a lot of my time with Southeast, because that's the the year-round club that we're working with the guys playing at a very high level too. So you're always kind of battling that, building a culture, building that program where everybody buys into it, but you also have guys who have other obligations, and they go and do basketball and they do baseball and track and lacrosse and all these different things. um, I I'm 100% for it. I think specialization to a point in a sport you know doesn't necessarily it's not necessarily the best thing. Would rather have athletes who are well rounded. um, I just think, one, their mental IQ, their ability to understand the game itself heightens if they see it differently on a basketball court. Back to then the soccer field and being able to kind of transition and do all that. Um, Obviously, building themselves up as athletes, doing track and field and whatever, and then transitioning back onto the soccer field. I think that is a huge aspect too. Um, and I understand a lot of coaches have a tough time accepting the fact that, hey, my best player might be coming straight from basketball practice today, but we have practice indoor from 8 to 9:30, and he goes right back to school tomorrow, and maybe he might not be at his best at practice, and that's just something that you kind of have to understand and kind of get, just accept at that point, because you want these guys to keep coming out. You don't want to keep them not wanting to come to soccer practice because you're not accepting of the fact that they have other interests for sure. So it's a tough thing that a lot of people deal with, but I definitely think for my own perspective, my own opinion, I think it's really important that those kids get those experiences too.
So talk to me about kind of how the high school side, as far as coaching. I mean, was Montville your first opportunity? Was it somewhere before? Just talk about that with me a little bit.
Um, yeah, so right out of college, I got a job at Marble High School teaching health and phys ed. Um, my second year, I hopped on as the varsity assistant under Coach Accolini, who you were lucky enough to meet last year. He was and still is one of the best coaches that I've worked with. He's over at Coast Guard now, um, but he was absolutely phenomenal. Um, so I spent the last 3 years, working with that program. Um, I had a blast. I've always end goal from the beginning of my thoughts on what I wanted to do for my career. My end goal was to be a health and PE teacher at a high school and coaching high school soccer. Whether it be, obviously being the head coach was the end goal, but at that time at Montville was awesome. Um, being able to see all the kids in the building and then going right out to practice or a game afterwards. Like I said before, building those relationships, is huge for me. So that was, I wouldn't trade those past 3 years for, anything. It was a blast.
Was there any sort of when you were coaching for Montville, because it was your first, I think, full taste of what ECC soccer is, and I
Mm.
was talking to you about kind of the difference of seeing because when I was the PA announcer last year, I got to see different brands of soccer from everywhere, you
Yep.
know, because the only brand of soccer that I knew was the NVL, and I kind of equated to football. Football, 1970s, 1980s football, ground and pound. We're just going to run it down your throat, but
Hmm.
in soccer, it's a little bit different where I felt like the NVL was maybe a little bit more finesse, maybe the aggressiveness. And I'm not trying to say that the teams in the NVL are not aggressive, but I just
Yep.
feel like there was more maybe finesse that was talked about and maybe used more, trying to get precision passes. But when I looked at like Stonington, watching Fitch, it just looked like a different brand of soccer to me. And then I was like, oh, wait, they're both in the ECC. Now it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I remember, I feel like if you ask people about high school soccer, especially in the ECC, people always say, high school soccer is you want those athletes out there who are gonna, go out, fight to win, compete, that aggressive mentality. I think that definitely speaks to, especially when I played, what high school soccer was. It wasn't, necessarily the way you put it, finesse kind of style. It was, a lot of um, get your best kids out there. We're going to fight. We're going to crawl and, go and just try to get those, wins. But, at the same time, there was very technical players, very, talented players who played at the same time. Fast forward to now, I think, like we talked before, you get teams like Stonington who are, you know, year in and year out, they're competing for state championships. I think transitioning to more of that finesse game where they're able to let the ball do, a lot of the work. They're more technical, whether with the ball at their feet or, thinking of the game and their IQ is, through the roof. I think that is, how teams are going to be more successful across the state. Um, like you said, those programs that saw before, they had a little bit of that prior to, but I think the more successful teams now are going to kind of be those teams that can kind of transition to a more fast paced, under control, not kick the ball up the field, let the fastest kid go and get it, and then hope they can do something with it. It's going to be and it's something that I definitely want to work at with Fitch too, coming off such a successful season that they had, losing a lot of very talented seniors, but also, returning a lot of talented players too. Um, you know, being able to develop every single player so they're confident on the ball, I think is the most important thing. Then you can just interchange people here and there,
Mhm.
just opens up the game plan so much more if players are comfortable playing the game. You know, going out being nervous, being anxious, being scared. That happens. That's part of the game. But when the whistle blows and you're able to say, hey, you know what? I've practiced for this. I know how to do this. We went over this. I'm confident in myself. I think that's what really sets a lot of teams and players apart from everybody else.
The part that you mentioned about kind of kicking the ball up and letting the fastest player kind of go after it, it's something that I remember my freshman year. That was kind of like the game plan. But then we had a new coach come in who was young and fiery. He and I kind of butted heads through my 3 years with him.
Hmm.
I don't know if you know him, Adam Sebastian. Even though I butted heads with him, respected him as far as the intellect, the mind, a young guy who was fiery, knew exactly how to get us to a point, and I think he was the reason why we kept getting incrementally better, and then we
Hmm.
got to where we did my junior year. I remember one thing that he really talked about, and something that you said about getting the set passes. I remember he used to say there's a difference between just making a pass and making a smart pass. And then I remember the set pieces. He used to always, whenever our midfielders and forwards were kind of pressing up, he would always be screaming because he typically was a screamer, as a lot of soccer coaches are, because you got to get your point across. You got a big field there.
Absolutely.
but he was always saying smart passes, set pieces, 2s, 3s, 4s. He would always say 4s because typically, if you're making the smart passes as you're moving up, the defense is having to then either shrink or spread. And if he wanted the defense to spread, because then that allowed our faster players to be able to be almost like the cutters in basketball, the
Yep,
back cut.
absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
It's just one of those things, and it's just something that's kind of stuck with me even now. Like I haven't played soccer since what I graduated in 2011, and I still, you kind of get the juices flowing again. Just
Oh
talking
yeah.
about this.
No, I have those same, phrases that I always kind of throw out there. One that I say all the time is, play quick, not fast. I think playing fast, there's just more mistakes. People, are careless with the ball, kind of like what you said, going and make smart passes. But when people play quickly, I just think it, changes the mindset where it's, hey, like I need to play quickly, not fast, because I want to make the right choices. I want to make the right decisions, to get the ball where it's supposed to be, to get my body to where I'm supposed to be, in order to, put the ball in the back of the net, stop them from scoring, and do whatever else.
So how did the Fitch job come about?
Um, so our athletic director now at Fitch, Mark Romano, he had spent a year with us at Montville not last year, two school years ago. Um, so I got to know him really well. Obviously, I was coaching soccer there at the time, and he ended up coming back down to Fitch. So he had always said, "Yeah, I gotta bring you down here. Got to bring you down here and help out Jay and all that stuff." So I said, yeah, we'll see. I'm at Marvel. I like being in the building that I like that I'm coaching at. That's really important for me. So I told him, yeah, we'll see. Fast forward a year, Anthony Occolini decides, he went and got a job with the Coast Guard. He returned back to the Coast Guard after being with them for a little while. So that job opened up at Montville. Unfortunately, they went in a different direction. They hired Chris Ouellette, who had been with them for 13 to 14 years as a JV coach. He's going to do a phenomenal job. That program's in very good hands. So, at that point, I said, you know what, I heard that Jay was, deciding that he was going to hang it up and kind of do his own thing. So I said, you know what, this is my opportunity now to go and be a head coach. This is, like I said before, this is that end goal. This is what I've wanted to do, for as long as I can remember, be a head coach of, high school soccer team. So went in and, luckily I, pulled myself together for a halfway decent interview and had pretty good reports back from everybody, and ultimately got offered the job. And, I think that day that I got hired, I was driving somewhere, I can't remember, but I got off the phone with Mark, offered it to me, didn't hesitate to say yes. And I think I went out and bought a couple books. Now I've been reading over the summer now to try and, prepare myself and all this stuff. But, it's just very, very excited and very, appreciative of, the opportunity to get, this chance to, coach at the high school level and have my own program and build, a program that I, want it to be. At Montville, I can't speak how great of a opportunity that Anthony gave me, being just a volunteer assistant coach, the amount of trust that he gave me, the amount of times that we kind of talked about what we wanted to do. I don't think that there would be another head coach who would be fine with one of their volunteer assistants coming in and just saying, "Hey, I think we need to do this." I'm saying, "Yeah, I agree 100%. I think you're right." So I can't thank him enough for, him not even trying to, but him ultimately helping me build my confidence as a coach and try things out and know that I can coach at, the high school level in ECC for sure.
Nick, we've just about run out of time, but I really do appreciate you coming on and be able to hear your story and as far as from the past, the present, and what the future could potentially be at Fitch in the ECC now. big shoes to fill because last year they were in the championship. And I know a lot of people would hope to try to, see that team get back there and be the last team standing. I know if I remember, I think they lost to, what was it, Weathersfield last year?
I think so. I think it was 4-1 in the final.
Yes. Because I remember doing the PA for that. But again, it didn't feel like 4-1 because it was a very competitive game. And I
Mhm.
know, the program is in good hands with you. But Nick, as always, first time meeting you, and this was a lot of fun. I appreciate you coming on, and you're welcome to come back on anytime.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, Chris.
No problem. Anytime, man. I wrap things up here in the Connecticut Sports Talent Show. So until next time, stay safe. Remember, CT stands for Connecticut Town. I'm my journey, find them all. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody, and be well.